only way that I hypothesize that any object could make a high-speed turn like this is if the object was a highly quantized energy phenomena, that if matter, mass, was actually transformed into high-frequency waveform energy and had no actual weight to it. In fact, it became lighter than the lightest elements we know on the Earth. Only then could an object make a turn like that and survive, and physically and structurally survive. And again, the very fact that this can do this suggests to me the kind of physics that these craft are using. They have taken raw, solid mass, a solid spacecraft or solid material, changed the frequency into a high-energy waveform, and in that waveform, they're able to not only conquer light speed and possibly do light speed and conquer light speed, but they're able to make turns like this and maneuver in ways that are just impossible, that would cause a nervous breakdown to any modern physicist. No physicist can look at this object and admit that we're looking at anything other than possibly dust in front of the camera lens or some sort of debris, because they know that for any massive object to be doing velocities greater than even at 100 miles an hour, which this object is obviously going much faster than. Imagine going 100 miles an hour on a freeway and all of a sudden you just turn on a dime and go in a different direction. What would happen to your body inside of the automobile? You would go flying through the windshield at 100 miles an hour and you'd be dead. So what kind of physics are these craft using? What are we actually seeing here? Is this space dust? Is this debris? Is this a shooting star? Is this a meteorite? The answer is no, because we know that no physical object could structurally survive a turn like that. What you're about to see is the hypervelocity object sequence. It's actually one of my favorites in the investigation because it has some very powerful conclusions. So if you look in your video monitor, over here to the lower right, you're going to look for a little fuzzy object. It's very fuzzy. There's a lot of static on the screen. And you're going to see it moving at incredible speeds in a very curved fashion, going into the atmosphere and disappearing at the point of the horizon, right here. It's absolutely conclusive, if this object disappears on the horizon, that this is not a piece of dust in the near fields of the camera lens, 20 or 30 miles away or even 10 feet away. The object moves in a very curved fashion, suggesting it's moving over the curvature of the Earth, and very curved and disappearing on the horizon and probably going around to the other side of the planet. The fact that it's going around the planet and disappearing on the horizon is absolutely conclusive. And this is a very important piece of footage because nowhere else do we have a scene where we have such powerful relativity. Because we know the object is going from here to here, if we could assume the distance, if we could actually find the distance that the object moved, we could calculate its speed. Assuming the Earth is approximately 25,000 miles in circumference, and that using some modest calculations as to the curvature of the Earth here, I estimate that the distance between here to here is roughly 1/24th, 1/25th of the Earth's circumference. So that would make the distance between here and here roughly 1,000 miles. If the object traveled between here and here, I count in approximately 4 seconds, we can assume that the object is going approximately 250 miles per second. That is an incredible speed. It actually comes to 900,000 miles per hour. 900,000 miles per hour is faster than any known object to man and to spaceflight. Assuming the space shuttle is traveling at approximately 18,000 miles in the opposite direction, 18,000 miles an hour, I would have to subtract that speed, and we would come to 882,000 miles per hour for the object. So it's roughly going between 900,000 and 882,000 miles per hour. Incredible speed. We've never seen anything going this fast. Remember, the Apollo missions to the moon averaged 3,300 miles per hour. The space shuttle is going at 18,000 miles per hour. And meteorites and shooting stars top at around 45,000 miles an hour. So we know from the object speed that we're looking at that there's no way this is a shooting star or a meteorite. It's far too fast to be an object like that. And also, our fastest satellites using ion propulsion drive systems are going roughly tops at maybe 35,000 miles an hour. So comparatively, if all of this is correct and the object is actually traveling at 900,000 miles an hour, we're looking at speeds that are beyond anything known to science at this point in time. So before we actually decide if this is actually a UFO, we will have to do some estimates and some studies into advanced propulsion systems being conducted at some of our universities and some of our space labs to see if anyone could come up with speeds anywhere near this. We know that current technology, again, NASA today is actually using thruster engines in the space shuttle, and the Apollo missions to the moon were also using thruster engines that fire out tremendous amounts of hydrogen and other gases at tremendous speeds. And with all of that thrust capacity, we're getting speeds between, maybe topping at around 20,000 miles an hour. But actually, we're getting beyond that now. We're starting to go into what are called ion propulsion systems. Remember in 1989, after I had a long conversation with Dr. Earl Van Landingham, then head of Propulsion Power and Energy Division at NASA, we were talking about nuclear fusion, a particular type of nuclear fusion called deuterium-helium-3 fusion. Deuterium-helium-3 fusion was being developed by a scientist named Dr. Bogdan Castelmagwitch, an MIT PhD, who had spent about $27 million in research onto a new type of non-radioactive fusion. NASA at the time was very interested in this, Dr. Van Lang told me, because NASA was looking for a space power source. They needed a type of energy to drive its future ion propulsion systems. At the present day, the best power sources they could get were around only 100 kilowatts, 100,000 watts. So looking at deuterium-helium-3 fusion, Dr. Van Landingham told me, produces an energy of 18 million electron volts per fusion, an energy level that is far beyond any of our current space power sources. He also said that he was very interested in this particular type of fusion because he realized that 18 MeV protons, 18 MeV energies applied to protons could power spacecraft at velocities beyond our current imaginations. He said at the University of Wisconsin at Madison, they were doing studies into what are called anti-proton propulsion systems. He said that 18 MeV protons could send spacecraft up to 1/10 the speed of light. 1/10 the speed of light comes to 67 million miles per hour. 67 million miles per hour. So if we could imagine that somebody has actually developed a technology that powerful, we can see when we do a comparative analysis that our object that is moving between 900,000 and 882,000 miles per hour fits well within the constraints of a nuclear propulsion system. But we know for certain that Dr. Bogdan Castelmagwich's helium-3 fusion did not get proper funding. The project didn't get completed. At the time, James Fletcher, who was then the chief administrator of NASA, went to the United States Congress and asked for funding to complete this fusion because, again, it would be the most powerful form of energy for space stations and for space propulsion systems that NASA had ever developed. He was turned down. The project didn't get completion funding and to this day remains, in a scientist's mind, and it hasn't gone any further than that. So where else on the Earth could we find evidence of nuclear propulsion systems being developed?